track him down, and he says, I just didn't want to be a dad. And then tries to rebuild the relationship. So it's just as bad to force a man out of the children's lives as it is for him to abandon them, possibly even worse. Because you're hurting not only the man you're forcing out, you're hurting the children as well. And you're damaging your relationship with them yourself.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started with the Q&A. We have extended a half an hour, so we got about an hour to do this. And then we're going to meet downstairs in the lobby and just kind of hang out and chill, where we can all talk to each other. I apologize ahead of time, Hannah. You can sometimes go on, so I might nudge
Cut me off?
so we can get on to the next question. So.
It's not like I'm well known in the movement for my verbosity or anything.
Anyone have a dictionary? I don't know what that word means.
It means she's almost as long-winded as Karen.
Oh, no, pay for that.
So does anyone have any questions?
There's a hand back there.
Okay, you sir.
Me?
And we're all, I guess everybody's going to have to project.
Sorry? Yes.
Okay, yeah, go ahead and start.
Yeah, well, the first thing is, please speak up and use the microphone, because I'm having a little trouble hearing you. I wanted to mention...
Okay. This comes in and out, so...
A few months ago, I was at a cult recovery workshop, and one of the talks was PTSD and recovery, and one of the visuals used was actually the Duluth Model Power Control Wheel. Now, I pointed out that it was gender biased because actually a lot of men are victims of domestic violence, and to her credit, the presenter acknowledged this was true, but that, and in fact, the next visual, which also had the same bias, she acknowledged without my having to bring it up again, but she was using it even though she knew it was biased, because I guess it's the only thing that was available. You know, that was the only material that was available for her to use. And the other thing is, I helped publicize this event, and I'm hoping maybe to get some group started in Philadelphia that's interested in these issues. So if anyone wants to sign the sheet to give their information, or wants to get involved in it, I've got the sheet right here in this clipboard.
Yes.
What was the question?
Very big thank you to Eric for helping out with this. This was the person I was talking about. See, it keeps coming in and out like that. So yeah, if you're interested in getting more information about this movement, you can go to honeybadger.com.
Honeybadgerbrigade.com.
Thank you.
Honeybadgerbrigade.com.
And also sign up
men.com.
And also sign up for his sheet. Just come find him. He's wearing the Honey Badger hat, so that should help. But did you have a question?
Oh, just a comment about that thing that I observed at the cult recovery workshop about, yeah.
Okay, and locate, what was your question?
So in the past couple of years, there have been...
See. So just go ahead and talk loud.
Yeah, just
So in the past couple of years, there have been some very high-profile cases of fake allegations of sexual assault and rape on campus, college campuses. A very famous case was 10 years ago, I guess, on campus Duke, in which the lacrosse team was, which had hired a stripper, but the stripper had accused falsely 3 of the students of raping her, but some records from cell phone and surveillance cameras proved that it didn't happen. In any case, and these sorts of allegations...
Oh my God.
Ghosties.
Am I having a seizure?
So these sorts of allegations have happened occasionally for a long time, and then in the past couple of years, under a directive from the Office of Civil Rights inside the Department of Education, campuses were sort of semi-threatened that they had to create these kangaroo courts where the accused wouldn't have the right to to legal counsel, and they would be sort of kicked off campus before they had been convicted or anything like that.
The Campus Save Act.
Right. So I'm wondering if you know if this issue, which became a huge controversy in its own little world, and included, some lawyers from very prestigious law schools saying that, we're abridging the rights of accused male victims, people from like Harvard Law School and places like that. I'm wondering, do you know if in any sort of early version of this, the filmmaker had explored the issue and just decided not to go with it because it didn't fit the story, or is that just is that something that she never looked into because you can't do everything?
I think it's more that it falls under the greater umbrella of false accusations in general. And there is a very serious problem with this. And it's not just that false accusations are prevalent. It's that when false accusations happen, the falsely accused do not have the same recourse as other crime victims. And I say crime victims because this type of false accusation often involves lying to a police officer during an investigation, which is a crime. It often involves filing a false charge, which is a crime. It often involves perjury in the courtroom, which is a crime. And because of things that are written into the Violence Against Women Act in the United States, and similar legislation inspired by the Violence Against Women Act in other countries, the system itself is kept from prosecuting women specifically, not men, but specifically women who commit these types of crimes in the course of a false accusation of domestic violence or a false accusation of sexual violence. Now that's in the court system. And this isn't even on college campuses. Now the Campus Save Act is over and above the Violence Against Women Act. What the Campus Save Act did was separate the rights of the accused one step further from any legal protection that due process offers. So what due process consists of is things like the right to confront your accuser, the right to face your accuser in a court of law, the right to provide exculpatory evidence if there is exculpatory evidence that proves that you didn't do what you're accused of doing, or even casts reasonable doubt on the accusation, the right to testify on your own behalf, things like that. And in a college courtroom, the universities don't provide the accused with those rights. The accused cannot have counsel come in to represent him. The accused does not get to ask the victim questions, or the accuser questions, because the accuser isn't always a victim. And I mean, that was proved very dramatically by the Duke lacrosse team story, and it was proved again very dramatically by the Jackie story in the Rolling Stone. And the damage that this does is every bit as severe as, if not more severe, than the damage of being one time sexually assaulted. Because this can wreck a guy's entire life path. You can tell him he can never have the career that he was training for. You go to school for engineering, you're there for 3 years. You rack up $150,000 in debt. Somebody says, I didn't consent to being in your dorm room, on Friday night and having sex with you, even though she did. And all of a sudden, you're $150,000 in debt, and this one accusation ends your school career. Not only at that school, but at any other school that accepts federal funding in the United States. You can't be an engineer because she said, I didn't say yes, even though she touched and she played and she had a great time, but now she's embarrassed because her boyfriend found out. And this is just for situations where there's questions. Some guys have this happen to them and the girl wasn't in their room. She didn't have sex with him, he didn't have sex with her. but she had some other reason. I don't remember who I had sex with. Well, it must have been that guy. He was at the same party I was at, or I don't want to explain why I didn't get a good grade on that test. Oh, I was raped, and this does happen because it can. And it's a power that exists. Power corrupts. It finds the people who will tell lies, and they do. And it's not everyone, and it doesn't have to be everyone. It only has to be one. So, hopefully that's answered your question a little bit, but let me take the next question.
It's not really a question, it's more so follow up and a comment on what just transpired. One thing, as a gay man and as also someone who's experienced sexual assault, my observation of the phenomenon which is happening on college campuses, this accusatorial, later regretting the actions one took while intoxicated, is, in my mind, directly linked with the age of alcohol consumption being far above the age where these people are entering into unsupervised college environments, where it's a complete mixing of the genders and sexes completely unsupervised. There's no supervising figure which is there to chaperone over individuals who have no idea of their limits of consuming a substance which completely compromises their ability to make good decisions. If we're not going to enable young women to learn their limits, it's
Kind of like hamstringing them, isn't it?
Yeah, we're creating an environment where we're asking for this problem to erupt. We need to enable all young people to learn their limits with these substances which permeate our culture.
And this is a problem that I've been kind of aware of for different reasons since I was a kid. And this is something that when I've talked about it on air, it doesn't sound like it's a gender issue, but in a way it is. And this is, this isn't something that you can say, well, this is feminists' fault, or this is men's fault, or this is anybody's fault. We've had this evolution of behavioral changes in our society where things that when women were supposed to be considered morally superior to men, they couldn't engage in these things because it was considered a morally inferior behavior.
Dangerous.
Very dangerous. And drinking too much is very dangerous for anybody.
Absolutely.
Being drunk is the first stage of alcohol poisoning. It doesn't make it morally reprehensible to get tipsy and relax and dance and, go to karaoke and make an ass of yourself. But it's still...
You open yourself up to be compromised.
It's the same thing as if you were grilling with fire. You're dealing with something that can hurt you if you use it wrong or if you're careless with it. And we don't teach our young people that about alcohol in the right way. We teach them that there's no good way to use it or that it's verboten and therefore it's exciting, And we haven't put women through the same gauntlet that men go through, where you screw up when you're on alcohol, you're still responsible for what you did. Getting drunk is no excuse. If you wreck your car, if you say something terrible to somebody, if you go streaking and you get arrested for it, being drunk is no excuse. Women get away with a lot more stuff than men do in that circumstance, and girls than boys. And what it does is it makes them totally unprepared to monitor themselves when they're drunk. And what brought that home to me was a friend of mine when I was in junior high school, who he was a high school student, he was a friend of my family, was the son of one of our local first responders and he was at a party that, alcohol at the parties is Northwest Ohio, and all of Ohio is like this. Teenage drinking is almost, you could call it an epidemic, but I don't think that's the right word. It's very normal, and it's mostly German and Irish. It comes from areas where it's normal to just have a beer with lunch. And you get to the Puritan United States, and those families' traditions didn't change over the generations, even though the United States has this puritanical alcohol attitude. So these kids are raised at home with the idea that drinking is no big deal. Then they're told they can't have it. Then it becomes romanticized. Then they go to parties and they have beer bongs and they, drink as much as they possibly can. Girls' metabolism is not the same as boys' metabolism. And a friend of my family had to do CPR for about 15 minutes after finding one of his classmates conked out with her heart stopped in the front seat of her car after doing Jello shots because they all hit her system at once. And she died.
Oh my God.
And he is the only reason that they were able to bring her back. He kept her heart going. He kept oxygen going to her brain. And at the emergency room, they were able to bring her back. And if she had been a great big, 300-pound football player, she might have been able to handle that much alcohol. But she was, this little 5'2" skinny girl, and she couldn't. And we don't tell girls things like that. We don't talk tough to girls about alcohol or about making smart decisions with respect to pregnancy or about, we talk about vetting potential partners. We talk about you better shop around before you get married. But we don't talk about don't get mugged. Don't walk down the street, looking vulnerable because somebody will steal your wallet. Guys are taught that they have to be tough. Guys are taught that they have to be strong. Guys are taught that they have to be smart and make smart decisions because nobody else is going to protect them. Girls are taught to rely on guys to protect them. And it's a guy's fault if something happens to them. And they get hurt because they're not watching out for themselves. And it doesn't excuse the person that hurt them, but it still is better to not get hurt because you did protect yourself than it is to be vulnerable to that asshole who doesn't care about consent.
Well, it seems to me that the approach to alcohol is much like sex. We teach children not to do it, abstain from it as much as possible, which makes it more attractive to do. And at least with alcohol, we need to teach children, hey, we know you're going to do it, here's how to do it safely.
Teaching responsibility is hard.
No, you need to lower the drinking age. You need to give young people the opportunity to have experience with these substances in controlled and moderated environments. That's the only way. Or else you're putting these people with no experience of mind-altering substances when their hormones are at a height and where they're looking to engage in sexual experiences on the dating market. It's like, what the fuck do you think is going to happen?
There aren't very many baby boomers in here, but I can tell you something for the youth. My dad has told me about that. Again, this is important because it plays on exactly what he said. There used to be a different way alcohol was sold than it is today. There used to be high beer and low beer, 3.2 beer. I got a couple of nods from the only baby boomers I think in the room. And if you were younger, you could buy, I think it was 18. You had to be 18 still, but you could buy 3.2 beer. And at some point, 3.2 beer kind of went away. And, it was all higher beer. And then they came along and said, well, now we have this big teen drinking problem, so we have to raise the drinking age to 21. I think I was in elementary or junior high school. My older cousins were just horribly upset. I was just about to be old enough to drink. I'm just too young to be grandfathered. This is terrible, And all of a sudden, now we have an even bigger epidemic of teen drinking, which shows how good prohibition works, which apparently we didn't learn the first time we did. And if they were smart, they would look at, there's O'Doul's, there's Sharps, there's like 3 or 4, Coors Cutter is another one, a bunch of non-alcoholic beers. which I learned about when I was nursing, because alcohol makes you lactate, and that was something that I needed to do more of. Or not alcohol, but hops makes you lactate, and so I learned about all these non-alcoholic beers, because you can't give alcohol to your baby. That's bad for the brain. You could give non-alcoholic beer a drinking age much lower. It still has like 0.5, which is almost nothing. You'd have to consume a couple of 24 packs to get drunk, and that would be safe.
I'm going to stop you there. I want to go ahead and move on. You've made some really great points, but I believe you had a question next.
I'm not sure if I missed an introduction or anything, but can you talk a little bit about your background and your credentials and
Certainly.
how you became involved with the movement?
Yep. Actually, that brings up also why I'm not in this movement, because it's connected. I learned first about the Father's Rights movement. And the reason that I learned about the Father's Rights movement was my family situation. I married a divorced man, and he had a custody situation, and there was animosity there. I'm not going to go into the whole thing, because that's water under a bridge that's way back there now. But I started looking into, is there anything for dads? Is there anything online for father's rights? And almost entirely what I found was gay men banding together to fight against straight ex-wives who were mad at finding out their husband was a closeted gay man and using his sexuality to keep him from fathering his children and taking care of his children. He couldn't be there because he was gay, and he might infect them with gay, and that would be bad, And it was working. And these guys, their advice on how to survive the system was very dismal. No, you aren't going to win. No, you aren't. You can't get custody of your kids just because your ex-wife is interfering with your custody. No, you can't go in and talk about what a bad thing it is to separate children from a loving father. And that's where I started. And I got advice, and we acted on the advice that I found, and we got the best outcome we could have, which was still pretty bad. But it wasn't, you can't see the kids anymore ever again. It was, you're going to have a really rough time for about 15 years because of this system and the ease with which it can be exploited. And that's where I got started. Now, during that time, the friend that helped us move, where we had to move because the ex-wife had fled with the kids from northern Ohio to southern Ohio and said, well, now I don't have to let you see them. So we moved in with a friend for a few months, and then we got an apartment, and we got ourselves settled in the area where we were closer to the kids. While that was happening, she met a guy who was also a divorcee. And they'd gone to high school together. They started rekindling their relationship and everything, and his ex-wife didn't like that. Didn't like having another woman in their child's life. Started pulling things, and then she started neglecting, well, she was already doing pretty bad, but she started neglecting the child pretty severely. And at one point, the child was so badly endangered, partly due to abuse, that this guy got custody. And he married my friend, and they became both of us friends with us. And after they got married, the ex-wife started throwing false accusations. And she started minor. She escalated at one point all the way to, he broke into my house and raped me. And every single time, there was evidence against what she said that proved that he didn't do it. At first, it was just by chance. She just had bad timing. He happened to be in a place that had cameras. He happened to have a receipt that showed what time he was there. There happened to be people in the house. I happened to be one of them. So I was involved in this case as a witness. And I got to have a front row seat for exactly how screwed up changing our legislative system from the original Family Violence Services and Protection Act of 1984, which established shelters and established that domestic violence is still violence and something still has to be done about it. And it established a system for protecting domestic violence victims and helping domestic violence perpetrators find better ways of dealing with conflict. Okay, that was the Family Violence Services and Protection Act of 1984. In 1994, we changed everything to only protecting women. to, we can't deal with it if they lie. We can't accuse them of lying, even if it's obvious. And all perpetrators are men, and all men are perpetrators. And now in that situation, I was so shocked by what I was seeing, I began writing about it. And at that time, it wasn't for Voice for Men. It wasn't for any special site. I was on a social networking site at the time that doesn't even exist anymore. It was called Gather.com. And it's now like a tabloid thing. And my stuff is down because the ex found it. And at that point, she was being civilly sued for vexatious litigation. So she got my stuff taken down by threatening them with vexatious litigation. And to protect the site, I allowed the censorship without a fight, because when a vexatious litigant threatens malicious prosecution and threatens a frivolous lawsuit, you take it seriously. So I moved my stuff, and I rethought what I was writing, and I started my own blog, and I began seeking out communities that discuss men's issues, and I found Reddit. Reddit was where I started promoting the story that I had put on my blog, and what I had written based on the story. And that's where I met Allison and Karen. And at that time, Allison was involved with A Voice for Men. So she asked me to become involved with A Voice for Men as well. And as we were working with A Voice for Men, we were sort of asked, what do you call women who are involved in this movement? Because there's something a little different. Like, men are going to see these things because they're happening to men. But there's something a little different about women developing an understanding that everything isn't all hunky-dory for men, that there are problems facing both sexes, and the problems are specific to each sex, and each sex needs help with these problems. You know, what do you call women who don't just have that solipsistic attitude, and who don't get all emotional about, you know, well, our problems are bigger and screw you guys. And part of what ended up getting us the label Honey Badgers was, it was noted that we will wade into online forums where there are discussions taking place, and women who do not necessarily understand these issues, or women who have come from a perspective where they've suffered so much that they don't really see anybody else's suffering because they're sort of trapped in it. And, you know, so there's a bit of a variety there. Where we go in and we'll take the hits, the name-calling, the you're a misogynist, you're just a fat, angry neckbeard that lives in your father's basement, you know, and all that, and say, but this is still the issue. What about this issue? And can we talk about the issue? And issue. And even when we get threatened, and I did, even when we get threatened, we don't shut up about the issues. And Dr. Tara Palmatier came up with Honey Badgers after that meme online with the crazy, nasty-ass honey badger. So that's kind of where I came from. My involvement in the movement started with seeing an alienated father through custody issues, and it continued with seeing a falsely accused man through 7 years of court battles before I ever knew there was a movement and got involved with the movement. And once I did get involved with the movement, I've also seen another man through, a falsely accused man through court battles. I've helped to advise men dealing with false restraining orders on how to protect themselves against having a false accusation used to jail them, and such things. And that's sort of been my involvement in the movement. I've been researching some feminist history and some of the legislative history, how things ended up the way they are now, and what needs to be reformed versus what needs to be kept, because we do have to have domestic violence legislation. It does not need to be gender specific. So we don't need to eliminate the Violence Against Women Act. We need to degender. We need to have a Violence Against People Act. And that's where I am.
I can attest that there are pictures of her with a neck beard.
Yeah. There's a site you can put the Duck Dynasty guys' beards on you.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's my inside joke with the neck beards.
Move on to another person. Anyone else have a question? You, sir, in the green.
I guess I kind of had my question before it started. My question was, are there going to be any more films, any more of these films in Philadelphia? And the reason I said this is because coming here tonight, I've suffered 90% of what was covered. Sure, I wanted to ask my friends. I wanted to ask my family. But by simply standing up for an issue as innocuous as saying men are dying at the same rate of prostate cancer as breast cancer, but then there's a discrepancy in money, you're labeled a bully, you're labeled a neckbeard, you're labeled a monster, essentially. And for myself, to tie into my question, this is the reason why I was reluctant to ask one or two of my friends to come with me. Like maybe next time after seeing this, bring 2 more friends, then bring 2 more friends. I think possibly getting this out here 1 more time, 2 more times in the future.
Currently, it is available 2 different ways. If you are part of a nonprofit organization or an organization that does educational things, you can go directly to her site, theredpill.com, I think it is, isn't it?
Red Pill Movie.
And actually, you can get screenings that way. The way this one was done, there's a site called tug.com, and it's tugg.com. And if you go to tug.com, you can ask for screenings of, there's numerous movies available, this is one of them. And it's done normally on weekdays, and various theaters will do tug screenings. And you can actually organize your own screening if you decide you want to. That's, Chris organized this screening.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, for doing this.
And I'm probably going to try to do at least one in Ohio. Brian from the Honey Badgers has done one. He's got one organized in Chicago.
Yeah.
And there's other people doing this too. So anybody can do it. It doesn't have to be somebody who's prominent in the movement or highly involved in the movement. It just has to be somebody that can make the time to promote their showing enough to get enough tickets to sell. How many tickets did we have to sell for this?
78.
Okay, so, and this is a pretty big area and a pretty decent venue, so you can set it up, as long as you can sell close to 80 tickets, it'll happen.
Well, I do want to add to that. Eric, he actually had a backup plan if this event didn't happen, and given how great this night has been, I'm sure he might want to try to do a future event. So
Yeah, it wouldn't be a bad thing to have more than one in the same community, especially if this is a large area.
So if you are interested, I do recommend signing his clipboard. I know I keep shilling it, but that will be a great opportunity for that. And he's probably going to be the best person to do that because he did a lot more work than me on this because I'm disabled, so I'm very limited in what I can do. But he is an awesome man to get in contact with for doing another one of these events.
What constitutes an educational program? You said through tug?
Yeah, like if you've got, I actually, your church might even be able to do this. Anything where they'd have a place to show a film, where they would be able to say, yeah, we're going to bring people in to see this film. Now, if you belong to an organization that does it, I think you don't charge for the tickets. You simply, there's an amount, I think it's $250 for nonprofit, and it's $500 for profit. But you wouldn't be selling tickets at that size. And then you can actually contact Cassie J if you want to do a larger event, or if you do want to be able to sell tickets to recoup your expenses. So I definitely recommend checking her site out. And again, it's theredpill.com.
Red Pill Movie.
No, is it the Red Pill Movie?
I'm pretty sure it is.
Okay, yeah. Actually, I wish I could look right now.
Just Google it.
I can't remember.
Just Google it.
It's Red Pill Movie.
Is it the Red Pill Movie?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's redpillmovie.com.
So I'm going to go ahead and move on.
Next question.
You, sir?
Well, I have a very brief question, but a couple of comments. First, thank you both for setting this up. This was absolutely phenomenal. And thank you, Hannah, for coming.
I'm glad to be here.
It's nice to see you without the headset. My question, and you've probably answered it at some point or another in your hours and hours and hours of YouTube videos, but how do you, I saw it a couple of times in the movies, but how do you deal, or how would you recommend dealing, I don't want to say like emotionally because that's more of a psychologist question, but how do you deal with people who go, oh yeah, I completely understand that you have these problems, but you get no sympathy?
It kind of depends on the person that you're dealing with. You know, sometimes you have to leave your problems behind you. If you're dealing with a person that you know is so completely closed-minded that they are not going to care, and sometimes you can assess that with a person, and sometimes it takes a little bit of talking before you get, you know, this is very bullheaded, I'm done here. But sometimes you do. You just have to walk away and remember that that's one person out of the almost 8 billion people now in the world. And you talk to the next person. You talk to somebody who is willing to listen. Because there are going to be more and more people who are willing to listen. Everybody has a dad, brother, many people have sons, you know, many people are partners with a man, many people have coworkers and friends that are men that they care about very much. And they don't want bad things to happen to them just because they're men any more than they want bad things to happen to the women in their lives just because they're women. You know, and they certainly don't want men and women to never be able to work together. And like my situation is, once I distinguish that someone is not a troll and is not closed-minded enough that they won't listen, start asking questions. Because a lot of times if people start answering these things for themselves, they'll start to figure out, well, hey, you know, no, we're not trying to get rid of women's votes. But is it really fair that men have to sign up for selective service and women don't? You know, and is it really fair that a man's vote can be taken away by finding him guilty of a felony crime because he didn't sign up for selective service? And is it really fair that this has been going on for 100 years under the specific law that it's under now, and prior to that, throughout most of history, you know, in a different way? Is that really fair? And you can get them to understand that some things are wrong and that some things do need to be remedied, and to understand, once you get them to understand that we're not trying to take away anybody's rights, we're trying to promote the fact that if something is a human right, that means all humans, not just the set of humans over here with vaginas.
All right, so
Thank you.
Go ahead. We're coming close to running out of time. You in blue?
What can feminists and men's rights activists agree on?
We can agree really easily, I think, on the fact that cutting an underage person's genitals without their consent is a violation of their bodily autonomy. We can agree that it is wrong to force someone against their will to experience sex with you. And it doesn't matter whether you're male or female. It doesn't matter whether the perpetrator is male or female. We can agree that calling women weak is wrong as a generalization, even when it means they're going to get out of responsibility for something because they said they were weak. Women use, "you can't call me weak," as an argument in the pay argument, the earnings gap situation. And I don't like to call it a pay gap because quite frequently it is an earnings gap. the
Well,
second way.
anyone, who wouldn't want to distance themselves from this crazy bullshit that's going on right now?
Well, yeah, a lot of people are distancing themselves from the third wave.
I do want to say something about feminists and the level that men's rights can't agree with them. It's been my experience that most feminists out there are genuinely good people. And it's that they've drank the Kool-Aid, they've seen the propaganda, so it's easy for them to believe that we all hate women. I hate you, Hannah.
I can tell.
But when they actually meet us, they find out, wait, this person isn't that. I mean, I have a lot of friends that are feminists, and they're like, I would never believe that you hate women. So I think that we just got to keep talking to them, and it's like, no, we are not against you having rights, we just want to be addressed. And I find a lot of them, it's like, oh yeah, I hate that men don't have fair representation when it comes to rape cases. That's what I commonly see, that men should be identified as being raped when in many cases they're not. So.
And this is a situation that, when we talk about things that feminists and MRAs can agree on, I've been through both sexual assault and false accusation. And I wasn't falsely accused of sexual assault or domestic violence, but it was still an extremely traumatic experience. And this is something that I think, feminists don't want to be falsely accused of things. Feminists don't want women to be falsely accused. They don't like the label slut. They consider that a false accusation. They don't want women to be falsely accused of gold digging if they happen to fall in love with a guy who has means. And they don't want women to be falsely accused of being predatory when they're not. And the fact is, the vast majority of people, men and women alike, boys and girls alike, just want to live their lives, go to their jobs, get paid for the work that they do, support their families, raise their children, enjoy their friendships. They don't want to do bad things to each other. They don't want to hurt each other. And I think a lot of the interference that happens with that is that we all have somebody in our lives that wants to game the system, that thinks it's easier to game people and to game the law and so on. We all have somebody like the vexatious litigant that I talked about.
I need to stop you here real quick.
Okay.
So they've let us know that no one has actually purchased any tickets for the next film. So we have the
Yes, we
option
have.
if we want to stay here and talk, or we can go down to the lobby and kind of intermingle. So I'll leave it up to all of you. Which would you like? Would you like to go downstairs or stay here?
Lobby.
Lobby?
I vote lobby.
There's alcohol down there.
Sorry. All right. So we'll all see you down in the lobby.
I was just coming out of anonymity, and I was just a little bit coming out of anonymity, and the reason that I was hesitant at that time to come out of anonymity is that the feminists involved in the domestic violence victims advocacy organization that were backing the false accuser that was going after my friend had threatened to false report me to Child Protective Services to get my child taken away for being a witness in that case.
Okay, we do need to get downstairs.